All right, so let's jump right into this deep dive today. We're looking at the future of work, especially all this talk about unpaid opportunities. We've got this essay from the Griffith Review. It's called Unpaid Opportunities by Michael Newton.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of articles all about internships. So consider this your crash course on how the job market is really changing and, of course, what it means for you.
Well, and it's so interesting how this connects to a lot of the anxieties that people are feeling these days, right? Like, are younger generations actually lazy? Are they just entitled? Are they choosing avocado toast over hard work and all that?
Right. That narrative is everywhere.
Yeah.
But the essay also points to Jennifer Rayner's book. It's called Generation Less. And her data shows that younger workers are actually switching jobs less often, less frequently than older generations. Yeah.
So it's a myth. And it's actually distracting us from the real problems here. If we look closely, globalization is changing how everything works. Technology is automating jobs, at a crazy pace.
Mm-hmm.
And more work is becoming, short-term or just contract-based, right? So all of that makes it way harder to find a stable job, a good-paying job, especially when you're first starting out.
Yeah, totally. And Newton really paints a vivid picture of this in his essay. He's highly educated, he wants to work, but finding a secure full-time job, it's been a constant struggle for him.
And his story, it's not unique, right? We're seeing more and more people underemployed, stuck in jobs that don't use their skills or that don't pay them what they deserve. And wages, they're just stagnating for so many people, especially, young people trying to get started in their field. It's like the system demands you to have all this experience, but then it gives you no paid opportunities to actually get that experience.
Totally. And that brings us to the big question. Unpaid internships. The essay brings up this really kind of shocking statistic. 58% of Australians aged 18 to 29 have done unpaid work in the past 5 years. Over half. What does that tell you about what young people are dealing with?
I mean, it raises some serious questions about whether these internships are actually about getting experience, or if they're just exploiting young people who can't afford to say no to the opportunity. Because let's be real, not everyone can just work for free, right? It creates this system where the opportunities
are tied to how much money you have.
Exactly, yeah. And Newton shares this story in the essay about this intern who got yelled at for living with her parents while she was working for free. It's just so out of touch, these expectations some people have.
It really is. It makes you wonder,
Yeah.
Have you ever felt that pressure to take an unpaid internship? Did you feel like you actually had a choice? And looking back, how did that affect your career? Right? It's tough.
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, the articles that we've got about internships, they do point out some potential benefits, right?
Yeah.
Internships can help you figure out what you actually want to do and maybe open some doors to connections you wouldn't have otherwise.
That's true. When they're done right. Internships can be a great way to, build your skills and your network.
Yeah, for sure. But then on the other hand, right, you have unpaid work, which kind of devalues people's labor and sends the message that your time and your skills, they're not actually worth paying for. Yeah. Especially when you're just starting out.
Yeah, it's a tough cycle to break. So it really becomes this question of how do we get the experience we need while also being ethical about this unpaid work? How do we make sure everyone has a fair chance, no matter what their bank account looks like?
Huge questions, right? And then you add in another massive thing that's changing how we work, automation. That 2013 study by Frey and Osborne really got people thinking. They predicted almost half of the jobs in the U.S. could be at risk of being automated within the next 2 decades.
That is wild. Almost half. I mean, the potential for disruption is huge. The question is, will this lead to a world where technology just frees us from all the boring stuff? Or will it lead to mass unemployment and just make inequality even worse?
So many questions. Newton actually shares a story about working in customer service and seeing firsthand how automation can boost efficiency. But he also saw how it led to people losing their jobs.
It's true. It's a really important reminder that we need to be thinking about the human cost of all this new tech. Are we really heading towards some kind of Star Trek future where robots do all the work and we just have unlimited free time? Or is that just a fantasy? And even if it did happen, would a life without work actually be fulfilling?
It's crazy to think about. So if this whole traditional model of work is starting to crumble, what are the alternatives? What can we do to make sure everyone has a chance to succeed in this new world of work?
Well, one idea that's gaining a lot of attention is this thing called Universal Basic Income, UBI for short. And it's a pretty radical concept, but it could address a lot of these challenges head on.
UBI, huh? That's where everyone gets a payment from the government, right? No matter if they're working or not.
Exactly, like a safety net for everyone. And the essay argues that it could be a total game changer for a few reasons. First, it could help people who lose their jobs because of automation. Second, it could give workers more leverage to negotiate for better wages and better conditions, because they wouldn't be so desperate to take just any job. And third, it could even address the issue of unpaid internships, because it would allow people to take those opportunities without worrying about how to pay their rent.
That's a really interesting point. It could really level the playing field.
It really could. But of course, like with any big idea, there's a lot of debate about UBI. Some people are worried it would be way too expensive, or that it would discourage people from working at all.
Yeah, it's definitely controversial. It really challenges how we think about work and the role of government. But I think it's important to at least have these conversations and explore all the options, especially as we're heading into this unknown territory.
I totally agree. The future of work is too important to just leave it up to chance. We have to be proactive. We have to think critically about these challenges, but also about the opportunities. And we have to work together to create a future that works for everyone.
I like that. So, what are some things we can do as individuals and as a society to create a future of work that is more equitable and more fulfilling?
Well, first and foremost, I think we have to stay informed. Read articles, listen to podcasts, like this one. Talk to people with different viewpoints than yours. The more we understand about what's happening, the better we'll be able to make good decisions and advocate for real change.
And we can't be afraid to, challenge the way things are. If we see something that's unfair or unjust, we need to speak up about it. We need to hold our leaders accountable and demand better for ourselves and for everyone coming after us.
Absolutely. And there are also a lot of practical things we can do. Like, we can support organizations that are fighting for a living wage, or promoting worker-owned businesses, or exploring new economic models altogether.
We can also really focus on building the skills that are going to be in demand in the future. Things like critical thinking, problem solving, being creative, being adaptable.
All really important. And we can start to think about work in a more holistic way. It's not just about getting a paycheck. It's about finding meaning in what you do. It's about contributing to your community and making a real difference.
So as individuals, how do we make sense of all this change and find our place in this new world?
I think it starts with being honest with yourself about what you value and what you want out of life. What are your passions? What are you good at? What kind of impact do you want to have? Once you know the answers to those questions, you can start to look at different paths, different opportunities that align with those values.
So it's kind of like self-discovery as much as it is career exploration.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to try new things, to step outside of your comfort zone. The job market is always evolving, so you have to be willing to adapt and learn new things throughout your life.
I love it.
The future of work might be uncertain, but it's also full of potential. It's up to us to decide what kind of future we want to create.
Well said. So to our listeners, we hope this has given you a lot to think about. What really resonated with you today? What are your hopes and fears about the future of work? Keep exploring these ideas and share your thoughts. Who knows, you might just inspire someone else to dive deep into this really important topic. Until next time.
Yeah, it's a fascinating idea, this UBI, this universal basic income. Imagine if everyone just had that basic level of security, no matter what.
Yeah, it sounds amazing, but
Yeah.
could it actually work? What about the cost? Wouldn't it be super expensive to give everyone a regular payment like that?
Yeah, the cost is definitely a valid concern for sure. But people who support UBI, they argue that it could actually save money over time, by reducing things like poverty and crime and even healthcare costs.
Okay, yeah, I can see that. But wouldn't people just stop working if they knew they were going to get a check every month?
That's one of the big misconceptions about UBI. Studies have shown that people actually want to work. They want to contribute. UBI wouldn't replace work entirely, but it could give people more freedom to pursue their passions, maybe start a business, or take care of their families.
So it's not about replacing work. It's more about changing how we think about it.
Right.
It's about making sure everyone has what they need to thrive, whether or not they have a traditional 9-to-5 job.
Exactly. It's about empowering people and creating a fair society.
It's definitely a bold idea.
It is.
And obviously, people have a lot of different opinions about it, but these conversations are so important. We need to explore every option, especially now as we're heading into this uncharted territory.
Couldn't agree more. We can't just sit around and wait for the future to happen. We have to be proactive. We have to think critically about the challenges and the opportunities and work together to make sure the future works for everybody.
I like that. So what can we actually do as individuals and as a society to build that future of work that is more equitable? and more fulfilling?
Well, first and foremost, stay informed. Read articles, listen to podcasts like, this one. Talk to people with different perspectives. The more you understand about the forces at play here, the better equipped you'll be to make good decisions. And advocate for real change.
And we can't be afraid to challenge the status quo.
Hey, absolutely.
If something's not fair, we got to speak up about it. Hold our leaders accountable. Demand better for ourselves and for the generations that come after us.
That's so important.
So those are some big picture things, but what about practical steps we can take?
There are definitely practical things you can do. For one, you can start thinking about what skills are going to be in high demand in the future, like critical thinking, problem solving, creativity, adaptability. No matter what happens with the job market, those skills are going to be valuable.
Makes sense.
So invest in those areas, whether it's through formal education or online courses, or even just by challenging yourself to learn new things on your own.
Yeah, and I guess it's also about being adaptable.
Yeah.
And willing to change direction. I mean, those days of having one job your whole life, those are probably over.
They probably are for most people. We have to be comfortable with change and open to new opportunities as they come up. But beyond specific skills, I think it's also about cultivating this mindset of lifelong learning. Be curious, ask questions, and never stop exploring.
I like that. So it's not just what you do, it's how you approach it all. Work and learning, it's all connected.
It is. And it brings up another really important point. We tend to define ourselves by our jobs. But what if work became less about the paycheck and more about finding meaning and purpose? What if it was about contributing to society, making a real difference in the world?
That would be a huge shift.
It would.
But I can see how fulfilling that would be, to find work that aligns with your values and lets you make a positive impact.
It really would be.
So how do we get there? How do we make that shift from work as just a means to an end, to work as something that brings us joy and purpose?
That's a big question. But it's one worth asking. I think it starts with being honest with yourself about what you really value, what you want out of life. What are you passionate about? What are your skills? What kind of impact do you want to have on the world? Once you have a better understanding of yourself, you can start to look at different paths, different opportunities that align with those values.
So it's like self-discovery combined with career exploration.
Exactly. And don't be afraid to experiment, try new things and step outside of that comfort zone. The job market, it's always changing, so we have to be willing to adapt, learn new skills all the time.
That's so true. Sometimes the most unexpected paths are the ones that lead to the best places. And I think that's a perfect note to end on. This deep dive has been so eye-opening, and I hope it's given our listener a lot to think about.
Me too. It's been such a fascinating conversation about this whole future of work thing.
So to our listener, what resonated most with you today? What are you hopeful about? What are your fears about the future of work? We hope you'll keep exploring these ideas and share your thoughts. You never know, you might just inspire someone else to dive deep into this too. Until next time, keep diving deep.